What is going on, friends? Mike Mercado here. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. I'm your host from the Sports Cubicle, Sports from the Couch, and one of the trio over at Bear Era Podcast. A new episode has just uploaded, so make sure you guys are subscribed to us over there at Bear Era Podcast. Just search us on YouTube or wherever you get your favorite podcast. And of course, the Sports Cubicle, Sports from the Couch. So it's been a crazy few days over at Halasaw. For the first time in the history of the franchise for the Chicago Bears, they have fired a coach in season. Matt Eberflus's era as the man in charge of the Chicago Bears has ended. This is a few weeks after they fired the offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron just a few weeks back. And now Thomas Brown has emerged as the interim head coach and now a legit candidate for the position of permanent head coach of the charter franchise of the National Football League. And it got me thinking, we've heard a lot of names. We've heard a lot of rumors. We've heard all the scuttlebutt of who might be the hot candidate to be the Chicago Bears head coach next season. And there's a few names that are interesting. There's a few names that are out there. And it got me thinking this holiday season, right? As we all see the Christmas list, the holiday list, people buying presents for all the different cultures. This is the time of giving. And the Bears have their wish list, what they're hoping to receive this holiday season. And why don't we go over a little bit of some of those names they're hoping to see under the Christmas tree? And the first one is obviously Thomas Brown. Let's go with the guy in-house. So Thomas Brown is going to have the inside track that nobody else is going to have, at least for the names I have on my list, because he's the only one that's going to have head coaching experience. When he goes into that meeting, that interview with Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and the McCaskey family, he's going to have tape to show them. And if the Bears find a way to beat San Francisco in the West Coast this Sunday, which I do believe they're going to do, if they do find a way to be competitive, they find a way to play professional football, he has them in a, something people like to say in a leadership position. He has his team prepared. He has them ready for game situation, game management, how the other team handles certain packages and their personnel. If he shows the higher up at Soldier Field at Halasaw that he can do all those things, he has something that Ben Johnson and some of these other candidates don't have. And that's film on tape, right? He could show them. He could show his resume. So Thomas Brown is a very interesting candidate in that right. I do think it will be a mistake if the Chicago Bears really like him and he does show something great and he might be the guy, but they decide to only interview him. They stay within their shell. The Chicago Bears need to interview everybody. They need to have every name possible enter Halasaw. They need to hear what other people think about their organization that aren't part of the family, that aren't in the inner circle, which you could bring them names like Mike Vrabel, or more importantly, Bill Belichick. Why don't we look at Bill Belichick for a second and a Mike Vrabel or a Brian Flores? Anybody you can think of that has some type of personality, that has a way of they like to carry themselves and the way they want their team and organization to carry themselves. There is a reason Jim Harbaugh is not the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Is it just the relationship that he had with Kevin Warren when Kevin Warren was the head of the Big Ten? And obviously you have Jim Harbaugh being the czar of Michigan. So there could have been that disconnect. There also could have been the McCaskies don't like pushback. They never have. They never have loved a very volatile, high-spoken, powerful head coach. It's one of the main reasons they always go for first-timers. So I think Vrabel and, more importantly, Bill Belichick might not even be in the running for that simple fact. You have Vrabel right now who's doing consulting work with Cleveland. And obviously, we've seen Bill Belichick do the media round. They're going to have opportunities in different organizations. I just don't think the Chicago Bears are one of these organizations that want that type of personality in a head coach. And if you have like a Bill Belichick, is he going to just oversee and circumvent anything that Ryan Poles do? How can Ryan Poles walk into any meeting, any type of meeting with ownership or players and have any more gravitas than Bill Belichick himself? So there's a lot of ways that I don't think those hirings make sense, but you still need to interview them. All that being said, you still need to interview them. So those are the Brian Flores's, the Mike Vrabels, and the Bill Belichick's, the guys who have had head coaching experiences. Brian Flores comes with his own baggage with everything that happened with Tua. Do you want that type of relationship or that type of baggage or that type of potential of baggage with your franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams? Again, there's so much detail and nuance in those three candidates. Let's go to the first timers, though, right? That's one end of the spectrum. First timers being really important in that description. Joe Brady and obviously Ben Johnson. With Brady, I think it's pretty easy. We had the stint with Carolina, now working with Josh Allen. The thing that worries me and his biggest, at least for me, critique that I can have as a candidate, why I don't see him on the top of the list, but definitely on the list. There's a lot of things you like when you see the Buffalo offense, some creativity. I think it's interesting, though, whenever you see somebody, especially Joe Brady coming from Carolina to Buffalo, how much of whatever's happening in that offense is strictly just Josh Allen? To me, it's the Luke Getsy effect, right? Unlike what we had with Luke Getsy, where LaFleur is obviously the guy in charge, and Sean McDermott is doing the head coaching and is the guy in charge in Buffalo himself. Joe Brady is the OC, but he plays with a censor. He plays with a alien. That's his quarterback in Josh Allen. So you're asking somebody with no experience as a head coach and not that big of a track record on his resume to reward him by being around greatness that is Josh Allen. Brian Daboll was much more hands-on on the development of Josh Allen. And how well has that worked out for the Giants? Proximity doesn't make you great. It doesn't make it that you absorbed any of that. It just means you were at the right place at the right time. And that's what worries me about that Brady hire, that potential. Could it work out? Could he be a genius? Of course. You got to give the room of possibility for anything. But specifically with that, when you're surrounded by what could be the NFL MVP of the season, somebody who could be a Super Bowl favorite, a Super Bowl MVP this season, I want to pump the brakes a little bit on Brady. Ben Johnson's the interesting one. So let's assume, and we know that the McCaskies don't want to pay $15 million a year for their head coach, not after they've fired how many coaches and have to pay them. We understand that. But let's just go down the multiverse, right? The Thanos snap. And we're in this multiverse now. The McCaskies, money's not an issue. So you hire Ben Johnson. I think we all can agree. We love what we've seen from Jared Goff over the years. We obviously acknowledge how they built that team from the inside, from the offensive and defensive line. They have awesome weapons at the wide receiver, but they scheme well. They play well. They do these exotic and unique things while doing the fundamentals correctly. And Ben Johnson's doing that being the head of the offense. So there's so much to like about Ben Johnson being the coach that's going to be there side by side with Caleb Williams, seeing what he's done with your own division rival. And we're talking about the Lions, and he's done that with that offense. But the biggest caveat, who's the head coach of that team? It's Dan Campbell. It's one thing to be able to design a beautiful play, to have this pristine playbook. It's another thing to be the guy that has to take the arrows from the media, to be the one that goes to every single meeting, is there talking to every single player, every single coach, and being the one in front of that whiteboard. Training camp, regular season, postseason, draft. He is the one, the North Star, the lightning rod for that organization. And Dan Campbell is the ultimate head coach when it comes to all of that, whether it's his connection to his players, in-game management, the way he handles the media. That is a really big security blanket that Ben Johnson will no longer have. And for all of you who are NFL fans but don't know the levels of beat reporters, like you obviously know Philadelphia, top tier, hard media to deal with. Same thing with New York, Boston. Chicago, arguably, maybe not as visceral and have as much venom, but they are tough. They are professional. They ask really good questions. They don't let things slide when you think you're being slick. The Chicago Bears beat reporters are arguably the best in the NFL. So you're coming down to that without the security blanket of a Dan Campbell. Can you have the Riz, as the kids say, like he does? This is something that maybe the Bears are going to get wrong in the sense that it might not work out. It's hard to be a coach in the NFL It's hard to do anything in the NFL, in professional sports, whatever level of collegiate, professional, semi-pro. It's hard. Ben Johnson might be the guy you have to hire. He might be the correct choice, just like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels in the draft. The Bears, we're going to be fine either way, more than likely. But the correct choice, the choice they could not be wrong, was passing on Caleb. They had to pick him, even if it was wrong, even if he was a bigger bust than, you name somebody. Like the example already goes to is Jamarcus Russell. No shade to Jamarcus, but when people say the name of a bust, or Ryan Leaf, right? Again, no shame to those dudes. He could have been that. The Bears had no choice but to pick him. That was the right choice at the time. Ben Johnson is that as well. Ben Johnson is the right choice. Let's say Thomas Brown is good. He's okay. And he puts himself in a position that he's going to be a head coach somewhere else. But you know, and you just feel like Ben Johnson's your guy through the interview process. You got to get him. It might be wrong, but you have to be right in making the correct pick. And that's him. Even if it blows up in your face, nobody will question you hiring him. There's so many ways this hiring process can go. There are so many different avenues and emotions, but it's an interesting full circle moment. When the Bears landed on the number 1 overall pick, everybody knew Matt Eberflus was a dead man walking. And there would always be these weird stories about how long his contract actually was and what is the Tracy Armstrong connection of him being Trace Armstrong being the connection as the agent for all these guys in Hallisall. He's got a lot of clients obviously around the NFL, but specifically Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. There was always weirdness, and some of the verbiage he would use, the way he would handle press conferences, the way he would talk about accountability but not take any. We all knew the danger of and the pitfall, the trappings, that it's such a Bears thing, not just a Bears thing, a bad organization thing, that they were going to draft their young QB. They were going to struggle. They were not going to be right. And they were going to have to fire his head coach. You already fired him as offensive coordinator, but you were going to fire his head coach. And in his second year, he was already going to be on his second head coach. You wanted to avoid that as much as possible. Now, you couldn't force Ben Johnson to leave Detroit, but you could have done something. And now you're here. Now, the Bears might have lucked themselves into Thomas Brown. The Bears might have lucked themselves out where for all the different openings that are going to be in the NFL, Ben Johnson's best opportunity to win and make a lot of money might just be Chicago. They might have lucked themselves into it, but it wasn't by design. Ryan Poles, by design, was able to get Caleb Williams, or in a position to possibly get a Caleb Williams at quarterback with his trades and the maneuvers he made. This is not one of those cases. It was bad decisions. And if it wasn't for embarrassing, unbelievable ways they've lost consistently in the season, it wasn't just like one time, yeah, that's a fluke kind of way to lose. It happens, or we'll never see that again. They did it 4 different times in winnable games, being able to flip their record. Matt Eberflus could have saved his job. So I think to have this moment where they have the names are out there for them, they have a chance to luck into Ben Johnson, to maybe have Thomas Brown be the guy, and they have their quarterback. The only thing the Chicago Bears have to do in order to make this work is to stay out of their own way. Let me know, who do you want to see as the Chicago Bears' next head coach? Obviously, my dream, the wish I make every single night to the football gods, is that San Francisco is dumb enough to fire Kyle Shanahan and you just bring the Brinks truck to him and ask him what he wants. But I think Thomas Brown and Ben Johnson are the 1 and 2 options. And it's going to be interesting to see if they do what they're supposed to, and that's interview anybody. But let me know, who do you want to see be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears? Make sure you subscribe to us on all the different shows. It's me, EJ Sider, and Kieran Hall over at Bear Era. We have had some amazing guests, and we discussed this entire crazy week that was over at Bear Era Podcast. Search us on YouTube for that. And, of course, the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. Enjoy the rest of the day. We will see you next time as we cover more Bears news and see who will be the leading candidate for the next head coach of the Charter franchise. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. I'm Mike Mercado.